To parallel session 3 of the 8th International Language and Language Teaching Conference in Room 3. My name is Natalia Desi, a third semester student of Sanata Dharma University as today's moderator in this room. I will be in charge of this parallel session. Before we begin, please let me read the rules. First, each presentation will last for 15 minutes. Second, in this parallel session, there will be 2 presentations delivered in a row. Third, I will remind via the raise hand icon if you have 5 minutes left. Then I will send a notification on the chat box if you have 2 minutes left. Fourth, we will have Q&A session after all presentations have been delivered. And fifth, other rules can be found in the program book. So there are 2 presentations in this room today by Ms. Agni and Mr. Anselmus Pinhajjanto and his partner, Ms. Ega Leovani. Let's start with the first presentation entitled The Implementation of PPP Cycle in EFL Online Learning Amidst Global Pandemic, and it will be delivered by Ms. Agni Kusnikinasi from Aloha Cruise Academy. Ms. Agni, you may have your time. Sorry, Ms. Agni, you can start your presentation.
Okay,
right.
yes.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Natalia Desi, for giving me the opportunity to present my research entitled The Implementation of PPP Cycle in EFL Learning Amidst Global Pandemic. It is actually a descriptive qualitative study that took place in the professional training institution for hotelier and cruise ship staff called Aloha Cruise Academy. Okay, all right. So these are the points of my presentation. The first one is background to the study, research questions, literature review and conceptual framework, methodology, results and discussion, and conclusion. First, now let's go to the background of the study. Well, following the pandemic outbreak, exactly on March 2020, the Department of Industry and Manpower of Magelang Regency issued the learning from home policy. So we, as the training institution, have had to shift the face-to-face interaction into virtual learning. And consequently, it doubled teachers' load in terms of technology mastery, creativity, and classroom management. And in our speaking class, we got used to apply the PPP cycle as the standard of our teaching and learning process. But our major challenge is whether this same kind of technique will work in online mode of learning. And here I had 2 research questions. The first one is, how did the teachers implement PPP cycle in the online learning for English for active communication class in Aloha Cruise Academy? The second one is, what were students' perception towards the online learning for English for active communication class in Aloha Cruise Academy? For the literature review, I took some references from Richard and Rogers for the presentation and practice introduction, online learning using ICT from Nartiningrum and Nugroho, and then flip learning from Zainuddin and Nataran in Zainuddin. And this is the conceptual framework of my study. So this is the PPP cycle, presentation, practice, and production, with each types of learning activities for each of the stages. And this one is whether they are conducted in asynchronous or synchronous way, which parts of the activities are conducted in asynchronous way, and which others are conducted in synchronous ways, and the students' perception, and what are the students' perception on the implementation of this activity. For the methodology, the research method is descriptive qualitative study conducted on March to July 2020. The sources of data, 7 students and 2 English teachers. The data collection techniques covered in-depth interview, observations, questionnaires using focused open-ended questions, and multiple choice items with Likert scales. For the data analysis procedure, I adapt from Huberman and Miles, comprising collecting the data, displaying the data, analyzing and describing the data qualitatively, and drawing conclusions. And these are the results and discussion based on the in-depth interview that I conducted with the teachers and the questionnaire, both the open-ended ones and the Likert scales that I distributed to the students through Google Form. The first one is teachers preparatory stage. The second one is the implementation of PPP cycle in online classes using flipped learning. And the third one is students' perception on online learning using flipped learning in PPP cycle. And here we know that flipped learning is the combination of asynchronous and synchronous mode of learning, in which students learn new materials outside of the class and then establish interactive discussion in the class. The teacher here integrated the PPP cycle in online classrooms using flipped learning by making and uploading lesson videos containing the presentation stage available platforms like YouTube, and implementing the practice and production stages in live learning apps such as Google Meet and Zoom. Based on the interview with the teacher, this kind of integration provides some advantages, such as it will minimize disruption. The students can reply the lesson video several times and imitate the target language items. It will give them some pace to get themselves more prepared for the synchronous class. And since the teacher designed the presentation video by herself, so here are the stages: working on the course organization, writing the monologue scripts, writing the grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation lesson according to the course plan, organizing the lesson and discussing with another teacher for some suggestion, correction, and feedback, self-practicing the monologue to ensure that the lesson is presented accurately. And then she also made use of some computer programs and software such as PowerPoint slides, and then converting each recorded audio into MP3 file. And she also merged the MP3 file and JPEG files using one image video, and merging all the already merged MP3 file and JPEG using the online video tool called www.clidio.com. And now to the presentation stage. So the presentation stage of PPP cycle was fully conducted asynchronously through some lesson videos that the teacher made by herself through her own ideas and creativity, and that she adapted from some available references on the freely available internet websites. The contents of each lesson video consisted of listening to the monologue along with the script while focusing on the highlighted grammar, vocabulary points, comprehending the monologue meaning, listening and repeating some new words and expression of vocabulary enrichment, pronunciation practice, and then paying attention to the grammar explanation, followed by a quiz directly discussed in the lesson video or another quiz for homework. So this is one of the example of the video during the presentation stage. So here in the monologue, the teacher presented the character in the monologue captured from the lesson describing tourist attraction. And now we go to the practice stage. The practice stage of PPP cycle was done either asynchronously through grammar and vocabulary or conversation fill gap activity directly discussed in the lesson videos, or synchronously by discussing the homework or the controlled mechanical exercises such as arranging jumbled sentences and questions, answering the revised jumbled questions orally, or translation exercises. For the controlled one, and then taking turns answering questions on the selected and relevant topic orally. For the free and one, conducted in Zoom learning app meeting. So this is the example for the controlled practice activity, in which students arrange jumbled W8 questions and discuss them in Zoom learning app meeting. And this is part of telling about yourself lesson. And these are the freer practice activity, in which students took turns to answer questions orally about habits, about hobbies, and this is part of telling about yourself lesson. And now let's go to the production activity. So in the production activity, it was done in a fully synchronous way in which every single student presented a particular topic decided by the teacher, followed by a question and answer session. The teacher decided not to apply the other kinds of production activity done in groups, namely role play or simulation tasks, due to distance boundary among students and teachers' anxiety on students' unfamiliarity toward group assignment discussion through online texting or chatting. And now I would like to go to the students' perception that I gathered from the responses through the questionnaire. So it covers some points. The first one is the fulfillment of presentation stage, and then the benefit of the lesson videos in equipping the students to do practice and production, the visual attractiveness, the students' engagement, the technical problem, and the last one is the students' enthusiasm. Now, this is the responses that I gathered through the questionnaire that the student filled in the Google Doc. Now let's see in terms of the fulfillment of the presentation stage, emphasizing the input coverage, 71.5% out of 7 students agreed that the lesson videos uploaded in Aloha Cruz Academy YouTube channel provide easily understandable explanation in terms of vocabulary meaning, new expression, and pronunciation. Okay, and then 42.9% out of 7 students also strongly agreed with it. It implies that the teachers might have put their best effort in creating meaningful and useful inputs for the students' learning process, despite the fact that the presentation stage was conducted asynchronously and let alone through a learning app instead of conventional face-to-face meeting. And it might not really impede the students in absorbing the information. And then now regarding to the benefit of the lesson videos in equipping and preparing the students to do practice and productive activities, 42.9% out of 7 students strongly agreed that the lesson videos have helped them really well in doing the homework, in understanding the exercises, covering grammar, vocabulary, and new expression during the practice stage, and have facilitated them quite well in preparing the individual presentation. It indicates that most of the students might have been able to make use of the input in the videos for their language improvement and to perform well during practice and production stages, while some of them still needed additional assistances from the teachers to understand the exercise and to complete the homework and to perform a good presentation. Okay, so I will only explain the implication of some of the students' responses. And now I will go directly to the students' perception on online learning using flipped learning that was gathered through open-ended questionnaire. So the obstacles, according to their students, are the first one, signal and bad internet connection. Sometimes their friend's voice was less audible and lack amount of quota and occasional boredom. So they sometimes got bored during the synchronous learning in Zoom application. And the impression, the students found it easy to understand the knowledge, and they believe that the knowledge will be useful for his career and that they would be able to improve their English communication skills to achieve his purpose and target in building a habit to use English vocabulary in his daily life. And the impression, so based on the answer given by the students, the lesson can facilitate them to learn English, and that they were happy and motivated in attending the online class since they were something new and interesting. However, they also have some suggestion for the teachers, such as the lesson should not only be beneficial, but is also able to create some space for the students to have fun while learning, which can be done through learning vocabulary through songs, vocabulary guessing game after watching some English movie scenes, a debate section, telling about past stories, and a competition to rearrange words into correct grammar and so forth. And then the conventional face-to-face meeting would commence soon, for he believed that the offline class might be more effective for practice sessions. And then some students also expected that Zoom meetings would be replaced by a conversational video project in pairs, in which students can make appointment to work on the project outside the class, by also paying attention to the health protocols, particularly to avoid the crowd. And the conclusion, the first one, the teachers use flipped learning in implementing the PPP cycle, with the presentation stage done asynchronously through the lesson videos uploaded in the institution's YouTube channel called English Shortcut. Second, the practice stage, both asynchronously through quiz and homework given during the presentation stage, and synchronously through some learning apps such as Zoom Meeting and Google Meet. And the students' perception towards the online learning, the lesson videos have fulfilled all the required activities in the presentation stage. The lesson videos were beneficial in preparing the students to do practice and productive activities, and the lesson videos were visually attractive. Okay. Generally, the students mostly had positive impression towards the online learning, such as practicality towards future career, the role in changing students' negative attitude into positive one towards learning English, and its usefulness in increasing students' motivation. However, they wished for more variation. So the evaluation for this lesson video, or for this PPP cycle conducted in the online mode of learning, is that there should be more variation on the assignment, and then the online learning could be alternated at times with the offline one. And the obstacles are the technical problems regarding to the internet connection and quota, also boredom in learning. Thank you very much, Miss Natalia. That will be the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Agni. That was an insightful presentation. I agree with you about that learning. It should be have fun, not only beneficial. All right, let's move to the second presentation with the title, Could YouTube Benefit Secondary Education ELT? It will be delivered by Mr. Anselmus from Catholic Musikaritas University. Mr. Anselmus, you may have your time.
Thank you, Ms. Natalia Desi. Good morning, everyone, dear colleagues and friends. Because this is weekend, but we are working hard still during this seminar, you can stay calm and grab your coffee. And I will present, could YouTube benefit secondary education English language teaching? And this topic will be presented by myself, Anselmus Inharjanto, and my colleague Egali Fani is not able to join this seminar. And we are from Musikaritas Catholic University in Palembang, and I'm pleased to join this seminar so I can enrich my understanding and knowledge, because we are lecturers at the English language study program in MCCU. And here is my topic, our topic. Could YouTube benefit secondary education ELT? And the answer, if the question is addressed to me, I would say yes, because I always benefit from YouTube. If I miss the food in London, for example, I will go to YouTube and enjoy the ambience, the food, the traveling in London via YouTube. If I want to go to Australia, I can go to YouTube as well, because we are not able to travel right now. And here is the outline. I will start with the introduction, followed by lit review, methodology, findings, and discussion, and also the final one, the conclusion. I'm sure you are familiar with this kind of thoughts, and I put them in the introduction. We believe that English is the international and global language. This is the lingua franca of the world at the moment. It used to be Latin, but now it becoming English is the lingua franca because it is used for educational, economic, social, occupational purposes. And how about the ELT? If we face the Indonesian ELT, still the grammar translation is still prevalent, is common use in our schools. And the challenge is that we try to find the modern approaches or methodology. But still the ELT goal is the language acquisition. We try to acquire the language. Mr. argues that Indonesia's ELT is not yet successful. Why? What is the problem? What are the problems? Mustafa says that hindrances Indonesian teachers face that, for example, lack of authentic materials, students' poor grammar mastery, students' lack of positive attitude towards learning, schools' shortage of appropriate facilities. And if we see the Southeast Asia context, O'Sullivan underlined that the first language interference is still common. Culturally inappropriate materials, reluctant to speak, listening and speaking terrify students, big classroom, and so on. And we come to the idea of using YouTube, that authentic materials are needed to foster the acquisition, the goal of the ELT, the contextualization. How about YouTube? YouTube is global phenomenon. We agree with that. It influences many people, especially among young people. English widely used. It is fast and instantaneous. It is easily accessed due to the gadget and advancement and connectivity. And here is our question: to what extent are authentic materials via YouTube likely to benefit ELT in the context of senior high school in Indonesia? We come to the lit review. Here is the general concepts. We know the idea of the significance of language exposure. To be honest, I'm a big fan of the language exposure. For example, if we study in the English-speaking countries, that's the best way to learn the language. Because we are exposed to the language of the target language. We also have the idea, like Harmer and Krashen, about comprehensible input. They are similar. And also we have the idea of noticing and its characteristic of salience, the uniqueness. If something is meaningful, unique, we will notice it. Harmer would add a meaning-focused task. Mustafa says learning a language be enhanced when students see some sense of personal relevance. So if we have the personal relevance, we are able to learn easily or well. And in Indonesian context, we still have the problem, the discussion between who are the subjects of learning. learner-centeredness versus teachers-fronted class. And here is the specific concept. As argued by Larson, Freeman, and Anderson, the use of authentic materials gives students an opportunity to develop strategies for understanding language as it is actually used. Target language, or TL, is a vehicle of communication, not just an object to be learned. Another specific concept suggested by Little and Singleton and et al. Is authentic materials reflect some of the day-to-day concern of the native speaker of the target language. McGarry underlined the authentic text provides students with bridges to the world of the target community. Authentic materials can foster active, independent language learning, can truly promote autonomous learning. And here's the research gap that we can develop on this research, that YouTube as an alternative authentic materials bridges to the world of the target language. COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way students learn. They use technology and other digital platforms, including YouTube. So we hope that we can contribute to the domain of ELT pedagogy within the Indonesian context, particularly secondary education practices. And the research method, this is a qualitative method, and we involve the primary and secondary research. For the secondary research, we review literary works and data collection instruments. We use questionnaires, classroom observation, and textbook analysis to achieve the triangulation. The sample is a convenient sample of 125 second-year students from 5 senior high schools covering urban and rural areas. Here is the results. The first one, student perception rating preferences in learning English relating to English language skill. Students seem proficient in reading and writing, but they are not confident in grammar, speaking, and listening. You can cross-check in your experience. How about your experience in grammar, speaking, and listening? And referring to the English conversation and teaching aids, more than half converse bilingually during the class. Only 0.8% that always use English. The advance of IT has benefited ELT. Majority of students agree they learn English mostly via modern technology. Most students enjoy learning English, maybe consider its usefulness. They want to go abroad to travel, to study. The second, description of class and aims and type of learning and teaching, student-teacher roles. Generally had good facilities, including modern technology, but need the teacher's creativity. We have another problem that the big class causes students limited participation. Imagine that we have 20 or 30, 40 students in the class. So every single student has different opportunity to present their idea. The third one, the course books. The wide range of authentic materials is used in most textbooks. And the final one is based on the secondary research, COVID-19 global pandemic. We see that more digital platform, including YouTube, as a source of learning, accessing authentic materials, even as a media for students to share their thoughts, assignments, and so forth and so on. We come to the discussion after the findings. The first one, students enjoying learning English despite hindrances. That's an opportunity. Finding shows that students were unsure if they had good strategies for learning English. They picked up most English vocabulary with considerable effort, very hard for them. They learn skills mostly in the classroom. How about the outside classroom? They would speak Indonesian officially. The second one, the advance of IT means the world is like a small village. So what's happening outside Indonesia can be heard, seen immediately in other parts in our country. Students may learn English from native speakers or real life contexts, and there are many sources. And the third one, teaching aid is part of the exposure. Support the more frequent use of technology related aids, including YouTube. And the last one, speaking and listening. They are our problem, a challenging skill for Indonesian students. They realize the importance of English for international communication, business, and further studies. So we try to encourage the positive attitudes. For example, willingness, enthusiasm, eagerness. YouTube has the capacity that we need because it's attractive. It bridges to the world of the target language, and it also promoting student-centered learning. And we come to the conclusion, because YouTube is related to the authentic materials, I would say authentic materials provided by YouTube are likely to benefit and foster ELT in the context of senior high school in Indonesia. It is because YouTube attracts students' eagerness towards learning. It bridges to the target language. It's popular nowadays, even more during this pandemic era. And I would suggest teachers and students aware of the authentic materials via YouTube, because it is one of the new strategies in ELT. And for future research, we can specifically study YouTube various contents, so we can select the best YouTube channels to learn English. Okay, I think that's all that I have from our research. Thank you, and go back to Ms. Natalia Desi. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anselmus. That was an inspiring presentation. And now we're going to the question and answer session. We have 10 minutes, and I will invite only 3 questions, 1 participant, 1 questions. You may use your raise hand feature on Zoom, then type your question on the chat box. And don't forget to mention your name, affiliation, and to whom the question is addressed and the questions. And it seems there are already 1 question. It's from Miss Christine. Thank you, Miss Christine, for the questions. And I would like to ask Mbak Agni, from 3 stages of PPP cycle, which stage is the most challenging to be completed? And how did you cope with the problems? Thank you. And Ms. Agni, you may answer the questions, please.
Thank you very much for Mbak Natalia Desi and for Miss Christine Permata for giving me the question. Well, basically all the stages are challenging, let alone that we have to apply this cycle in the online mode of learning. The kind of engagement or the level of student engagement that we expect from applying this technique through online mode of learning will not be as effective as the one conducted in the face-to-face in the conventional face-to-face interaction. But actually, I found the presentation stage most challenging. I'd like to show our presentation stage. So as I mentioned previously, that the presentation stage in English for Active Communication class in the institution in Aloha Cruz Academy was fully done in asynchronous way. Okay, so it's all implemented in the form of a video. So the teacher developed the video by herself. The challenges are, the first one is that she needed to make sure that the presentation stage delivered to the lesson videos have fulfilled all the stages required by the theories in the presentation stage. Let me recall a little bit in the conceptual framework. So the presentation stage requires most of the time in the preparatory stage, because it must consist, the first one is it must set up the situation, it must cover the context of the situation in which the student learns, and it must model the language. Can be done through monologue, dialogue, or sentences. And third, it must also elicit the linguistic items comprehensively in terms of expressions in context, grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. So the first challenge is that the teacher needed to make sure that all these stages are covered. And the second challenge is during the development of the video. Okay, so for example, we can see here in the video entitled, in the lesson video, as the presentation stage, yeah, entitled Telling About Someone's Routine. The duration of the video is 50.30 minutes. This is the duration of the video, but the time required to design the input, to design the course organization, to develop and to revise, to re-edit, to redo the video, takes like 2 days. So it's 2 days in the working hours. So it took around like probably 14 hours. And for the video, that for the 14-minute video like this one, entitled Telling About Yourself Part 1, the duration was 14 minutes, 33 video. It was prepared for like 5 to 6 hours. Yeah, so those are the challenges. The first one is the coverage of the activities. Yeah, and that's the first one, and the second one is the preparation it takes. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's all. I hope it answers the question.
Thank you, Miss.
Christine Permata. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Miss Agni, for answering the questions.
You're very
And
welcome.
we have second questions. It's from Mr. Happy to Miss Romo Anselmus Inharjanto. And the questions is, I would like to address the question to Ramo Anselmus. How can we filter the students' exposure to YouTube, since a number of video sources might present non-standard English? I will give the time for the Mr. Anselmus to answer the questions. Please, Mr. Anselmus.
Thank you, Ms. Natalia Desi, for reading the question. Thank you also for Mas Happy Indriono. Are you happy? Yes, I'm happy. He is, in fact, my senior in during our study in senior high school in Magelang. So how are you, Mas Happy Indriono? Thank you for the question. That's very interesting. Yeah, we try to help as a teacher, obviously, how to choose or select the best channel, because I always use like CNN or the mainstream or the English or the American mainstream channel like BBC, CNN, and also we can go to the Cambridge, Oxford, because they provide a lot of things, materials, authentic materials. And I'm not sure about the the non-standard English, but if we try to the experience to see or watch YouTube channels, obviously we can learn what the native speaker would speak their English. Because in my belief, I'm not sure that people are talking speaking English in London, because it is a multicultural city. If you visit London, they would speak Polish, Indian, or even Indonesian. But still, I believe in the idea of intelligibility. So I would learn from non-standard English if we can use the language to communicate. That's the best way that we are learning English. So I am believe on the intelligibility, the idea of being intelligible, dapat dipahami. So I would drop the idea of the standard English or received pronunciation as the BBC did in the past, because it was strange that it was criticized that BBC, like the number one broadcasting industry in England or in the UK, that they will look down people speaking English. They from other country, they should put the subtitle in it, even though they are speaking English. So I'm not worried with the myriad of sources that we can find in YouTube. So I will encourage Mas Happy Indriono for showing students the best channel. That's probably the best idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anselmus, for answering the question. And we have the last question is from, wait a second. It's from Miss Mariana from Sanata Dharma University. Thank you to Miss Agni and Mr. Anselmus for a good presentation. I want to ask the both speakers, so in order to use video in class, how do you make sure your students really watch the video materials? Because, I'm so sorry. Because besides of the student engagement, they also have boredom in learning. And I will give the time for the presenter to answer the question. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Miss Mariana, for the question. How do you make sure your students really watch the video materials? Because besides of student engagement, they also have boredom in learning. Okay, so in our case, okay, I'd like to show one of the findings here. The interview that I did with one of the teacher. Before I start discussing the homework in Zoom meeting and the other exercises, I often review the grammar lesson that the students have watched before in the lesson video. I think it is important to review some points that have been given in the video so that the students can reinforce their understanding. Okay, so in my context, in the end of the lesson videos, yeah, I usually attach the link for homework or assignment or projects. The homework can be about the linguistic items such as new expressions, grammar, or vocabulary, or it can be like presentation project. Okay, so to be able to do the quiz, like vocabulary quiz, for example, they have to refer to the video, something like that. And about boredom, indeed, yes. Based on the data, based on one of the students' responses, he also mentioned about boredom, and this is the occasional boredom. Boredom is indeed unavoidable in the online mode of learning. So we might be able to verify or modify the learning activities with communicative games or information gap activities, or the presentation project, yeah, the individual presentation project must be followed by question and answers so that the students will listen to the presentation carefully. And there are so many other ways that we can do to modify the learning activities, particularly in the practice stage, done synchronously through the learning apps. Thank you, Miss Mariana.
Thank you, Ms. Agni. For Mr. Anselmus, if you have add some points to answer the questions.
Thank you. I think for question proposed by Ms. Mariana, it was explained very well by Ms. Agni, and I would add that, yeah, to avoid the boredom for the students, we can vary the teaching method, but also we can propose to the student they upload their video or their project or project-based learning and upload them in YouTube or other digital platform. That would be beneficial for students and encourage them to be active. And the second one, can I ask, can I move to the second question by Ms. Christine Permata? Thank you for the question. The question is, how do you deal with the proficiency level facing the native speaker speaking? Okay, yeah, that's true. That's the emphasis that we can propose in this discussion, that the use of the authentic materials can also be a problem at the beginning. I remember my experience during my studies when I was in Ireland. For the 2 weeks, I couldn't understand the television program at all. But after 1 month, 2 months, because we are familiar with the language, with the accent, so we can understand bit by bit the conversation, the language they use. So I think the authentic materials via YouTube can be useful for students if they they are exposed to the language. As I said in the beginning, I am a big fan of the language exposure. So when we are exposed with the language, the target language, we can learn more. Okay, thank you. That's my answer.
Thank you, Mr. Anselmus. And our question and answer session is already over, and that is the end of the parallel session 3. After this, parallel session 4 will start at 1:15 p.m. and you may leave this room and back at 1:15 p.m. Thank you for coming. All right, for the exit ticket, it will be given in the main room, which is after the parallel session 4.
Thank you, Natalia Desi. Mas Happy, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Happy and Mr. Anselmus.
Sehat-sehat Romo in
Sehat-sehat. Kapan ke Palembang?
menunggu undangan. Oke. Thank you, see you everyone.
Okay,
Thank you.
see you. Bye.